we're going to have a cut in diversity jobs at the NHS. I mean, given that we've actually got people working in the NHS who are NHS trusts advertising for jobs in, decent, really decent salaries, to be net zero compliancy officers and diversity officers and HR officers and the like, do you think this is ever going to happen?
Look, I think time will tell about whether or not it happens. In the grand scheme of things, this is a pretty small change in the NHS system. I mean, it is a waste of money to have people going around doing diversity and equity when what you really need are people who can manage a hospital successfully.
You and your crazy thinking, Matthew, it'll never catch on.
No, good management techniques never catch on. What I find so fascinating about this debate, often we do assume that the NHS is overmanaged, there's too much middle management, there's too much bureaucracy. It doesn't necessarily set up to the facts. The NHS actually only has about 2% of its staff are middle managers, compared to around 9% across the general economy. So what we've had time and time again is governments have come in and have said there's too many managers, we can fix the NHS by having fewer managers. That often actually just means putting more burden onto doctors and nurses to do some of the paperwork.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be kind of a smarter thinking when it comes to this particular issue. And the government doesn't necessarily know best, kind of top down, it's precisely the nature of managers that you require for hospital.
Yeah.
But inevitably that happens in the NHS.
No, indeed. I mean, this is part of this of, this centralised structure we've got. And we saw, of course, an awful lot of middle managers and involved in the last formation of the NHS, because it gets reformed every 10 years. One thing we never do is actually just hire more people to do the actual doctoring and nursing and scanning and all of that. But they did that, and then they sacked a load of people. They got massive payoffs, well, redundancies, big payoffs. 2 days later, they're on a higher day rate to come back and work as consultants, which I think a lot of us found very troubling. And they were trying to ban that. Carries on, we know, it's this day and age. But the key thing is we know that there are a lot more people being hired. The Guardian has the most wonderful public sector jobs adverts. And again, it's all about diversity officers. It's all about, net zero officers. People who don't actually, with all due respect, add anything in terms of output. They're just basically stopping other people getting their job done most of the time. And I completely understand you need to have people, HR, if there's a grievance, if someone's being bullied, racism or sexism, you need to have people to deal with that. But there's been an explosion in these people. And it's now an industry, isn't it? And yet these people don't actually have to have a particular track record on getting anything done. We've seen in the Treasury recently an extraordinary piece, I think it was the Telegraph, that had some internal documents, basically, from whistleblowers, basically saying that 10% of their time as senior managers they were told you must spend 10% of your time dealing with diversity issues. Your trans issues or this or that, for your work appraisals. We're actually telling people, paid by the public sector, in the public sector by taxpayers, who've got a really important job to do, dealing with our economy and other things, please spend 10% of your time doing something totally non-productive, and that is how you'll get ahead in this organisation. That is a disaster.
Yeah, it's totally a bizarre situation, particularly when it comes to civil service. I mean, the civil service is meant to be accountable to the government ministers. Many of them will go on the record talking about their anti-woke credentials, about how they don't think that this should be a priority, how they think it's divisive to focus excessively on issues like race, gender and sexuality, and that we should treat people as individuals and equally. But at the same time, literally the departments that they run are hiring all these people to do these jobs. So it just feels like a total failure for the ministers to actually grasp the departments. It's essentially kind of something quite structurally wrong. It's a very yes minister-esque, isn't it, Julia, where basically the civil servants just get on with whatever mumbo-jumbo they like. I don't know if you've seen this. The Home Office, for example, has got an insurgent group, an anonymous group of people who are trying to undermine the government's policy of sending people to Rwanda. Now, whatever you think about that particular policy, if you're a civil servant, your job is not to have your own political and policy positions. Yes. Your job is to implement the government's agenda. And if you're trying to push back against that agenda, you're fundamentally failing in your job. And I'm not sure you're cut up to be a civil servant. You should become an activist instead.
We're always being told about this amazing first-rate, civil service. And I mean, basically, they're all working from home as far as we can tell. The failures, I think we saw firsthand, which cost lives, where we had the Afghanistan withdrawal, where people were working from home, they weren't able to actually process anything because they couldn't access computers, but were still allowed to work from home. But also the NHS, these delays cost lives. People can't get appointments. I mean, I had to deal with, the bureaucracy of being sent appointments by paper, by letter. I kept saying, email me. I'm on email. It's the 21st century. And they kept sending me a letter. The letters would arrive after the day of the appointment or when the appointment's already been moved to another day. You can't get anyone to answer the phone. I got given email addresses that didn't exist on official headed notepaper. I mean, it's sort of like dealing with an organisation in the 1970s sometimes.
It is, and that's inevitably what happens when you've got a massive bureaucracy. This is I think one of the fundamental issues with the NHS. It is too big and too complex. You know, again, over 1 million people work in that system. It's bigger than, you know, many organisations short of the People's Republic of China's army. The PRC's army, you know, is one of the fewer bigger organisations in the world. And of course, you're going to get these issues when you have that much, that many people, because you need bureaucracy to manage that many people, and then inevitably the bureaucracy just becomes inefficient and bloated and incompetent and lacks in coordination. And that's why you need to bring market mechanisms and competition into the system, so that there's actually proper incentives. You know, it's the reason why, you know, prices work really effectively is because they send signals about what to produce. But there's no prices. I mean, there are artificial prices in the NHS, but they're kind of made up. There's no real price kind of signals. There's no competitive pressures in the NHS. I think a good way to do it would be to give people vouchers so they could go in, if they're not getting a service from the NHS, they could go and use that voucher in wherever they like in the private sector. Give patients that choice if the NHS is failing to deliver.